Most Lord of the Rings video games have their own versions of what's canon, changing the necessary plot points so that they can fit into their own stories. But no game has taken more liberties with their storytelling than the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games. Today we are going to look into the biggest changes they made from Tolkien's original version.
Build me a army worthy of Mordor.
So, to start off, I will point out that we have of course decided to just focus on the second of the two games, Shadow of War. The main reason for this is because it's more recent and because it has more drastic changes to the lore, like by far. But if you guys do enjoy this video and would like a similar one on the Shadow of Mordor game, then let us know. Additionally, if you're into this sort of stuff, Lord of the Rings video games, or just Lord of the Rings gaming in general, you can check out our other channel, the Tabletop Alliance. Over there we play lots of Middle-earth strategy battle game, which is a nice change of pace from the content on this channel, and if you're a gaming and Middle-earth fan, I'm sure you will love it just as much. So, moving on. The first major change I want to talk about is Celebrimbor's involvement in the creation of the rings. So one of the main story points in the game is that Talion and Celebrimbor have forged their own Ring of Power to oppose Sauron. Now, and please correct me if I am wrong, I may have missed something, but as far as I am aware, all of the Rings of Power that were created by Celebrimbor were ruled by the One Ring created by Sauron. That was the entire point of the One Ring. All Rings of Power that were subsequently created after the creation of the One would just fall under its dominion, which is why nobody created more rings after Sauron created his. They were created with magic and craftsmanship taught to Celebrimbor by Sauron. However, in the games, Talion and Celebrimbor seem to just stroll into Mount Doom, forge a new ring, and use it with pretty much zero consequences. And as far as I can tell, this is never really explained. Again, if I have missed something here, please let me know in the comments down below. The next change I would like to talk about is one of the biggest and most controversial. That is, of course, the Nazgul. Now, as we have little to no information on the Nazgul, it's very hard to include them so heavily in a story like this one without making some stuff up. I am completely fine with the writers giving the Nazgul their own backstories. However, using such prominent and important characters and completely changing their fate is a little, well, surprising. So who exactly are we talking about? Well, the three main wraiths that are given a backstory in Shadow of War are Suladan, Helm Hammerhand, and of course, Isildur. In the game, Suladan was a Númenórean king who ruled over the nation of Harad during the Second Age. He originally led an army to oppose Sauron, but was taken back when Sauron surrendered and offered him a ring. He took the ring and eventually moved Sauron from an enemy to an advisor, eventually falling under Sauron's control and becoming a Nazgul. I'm personally a big fan of this backstory. It's original and does not affect any canon or lore as we know it. It does, however, seem to take big inspiration from the story of Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Númenor, who was also corrupted by Sauron after making him his advisor. Anyway, I would have much preferred that they had this sort of backstory for all of the Nazgul, rather than changing existing character stories. Let's look at Helm Hammerhand. So canonically, Helm was the king of Rohan that gained fame through his killing punch. That is putting it extremely briefly, but he is a very cool character and we do actually have a full video on him if you'd like to check that out. In the game, however, his daughter is kidnapped and he is shot with arrows. Sauron, in his Anatar form, offers Helm a ring that will help him heal from his wounds. He takes it and begins his descent into darkness, eventually becoming a Nazgul. In actual Tolkien lore, Helm died and was frozen in the snow after going out alone to fight some Dunlendings. Certainly not in a position to be healed. Personally, I absolutely loved seeing his character brought to life in the game, but mainly just because he is so cool. And like I said, I would have preferred them not to change the story of a character we are already somewhat familiar with. This is never more true than with the next character, Isildur. So as we know, Isildur was the one that cut the ring from the hand of the Dark Lord himself. He was then corrupted by its power before it betrayed him and he was shot with many arrows. Now, while it's true that the body of Isildur was never found, I find it very tough to believe that he was healed or revived by the Ring of Power to become a servant of Sauron. He served the Dark Lord as a ringwraith until he was eventually defeated and freed by Talion, who actually had to take Isildur's ring to survive himself. And of course, it eventually corrupted him as well, meaning Talion ultimately takes Isildur's place in the Nine. Which is such a fantastic idea to me. It means that the entire Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games are essentially just a backstory to one of the 9 Nazgul. Now that is awesome. Having said that, both Helm and Isildur were born after the 9 first appeared, and there has never been a mention of a Ringwraith being killed before Eowyn kills the Witch King. So there should never have really been 2 spaces for Isildur and Helm to fill. Moving on to my next point, Targaroth, the Balrog. So although this is insanely cool, and one of the most visually impressive parts of the game, it's highly unlikely that Sauron would have had a Balrog under his command. It's said that Durin's Bane, the Balrog from Moria, is the last of its kind in Middle-earth. Now while this game is obviously a prequel to Lord of the Rings, it seems unlikely that a Balrog would have existed so recently in Middle-earth's history. But let us say for argument's sake that there was a Balrog alive and that he did join Sauron. This would pretty much seal the victory in the War of the Ring for the bad guys. Let's not forget it takes a being of unbelievable power to match a Balrog, someone like Gandalf or Glorfindel. A Balrog would most likely destroy almost all of Gondor's and Rohan's armies single-handedly. But either way, it was a very, very cool addition to the game. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is Shelob. If you have played this game, you knew this was coming. So Shelob is of course an ancient spider that lives in the caves above Minas Morgul and feasted on any orcs or humans or whatever tried to pass through her home. She never interfered with any of the events or goings on in Middle-earth, or never really allied or opposed Sauron. However, in the game, she takes the form of a sexy, seductive lady that is deeply involved with the events of Middle-earth. She interferes with Talion's and Celebrimbor's quest, and even tries to take the ring for herself. Now, this gets a lot of hate, but let me try and defend it for a second. We know that Shelob is a descendant of Ungoliant, the original giant spider, who was described by Tolkien as being an evil spirit taking on the form of a giant spider. Shelob, of course, takes the same form. Why? Well, because a giant spider is terrifying. When she feels the need to involve herself in Talion's quest, she chooses to take a human form. Presumably, it's much easier to communicate with someone in human form than it is as a scary giant spider. Now, while this does make the decision seem a little less strange, I think I would have preferred the writers to just create a new character for this role and kill her off before the game ends as a way of explaining why she wasn't around during the War of the Ring. What do you guys think about this? Would you have preferred a new character, or are you a fan of this take on Shelob? There are of course many changes to the lore in these games, but these are easily the biggest and potentially most controversial from the second installment. If you enjoyed this and would like to see a part 2, or a part 2 for part 1, please let us know down below and we'd be happy to cover the rest of the changes. Okay, time has come as always to thank our patrons. A big shout out goes to the members of the 3 highest tiers: Kevin, Abram, Matt, Nashith, Denver Steel, Gregory, John and Andrew. We can't thank you all enough for the support towards this channel and our short film. If you're interested in supporting yourself, you can do so via our Patreon page. There's a variety of tiers on there that you can choose from. Finally, don't forget to go and check out the Tabletop Alliance channel if you're interested in seeing us play some Middle-earth strategy battle game. It's super fun. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you have a great day and I will see you next time on The Broken Sword.